let's get back into the zone. We've been tested today. We've been distracted. Shaheen's sick. We filmed this intro and it got deleted. The computer died. Yeah, crashed on us, and we're back. It's okay. Yeah, welcome back, guys. It is episode 2 of season 2, and we thought today we would do a little blast from the past, unfiltered, sit down, unplugged chat, kind of similar to our episode 0, where we were trying to do a tech setup and it turned into an episode, but this time we're not doing a tech setup. It's just going to be a unfiltered conversation about, which means we just have no plan and we're tired. Just means that it's Saturday and we're tired and we've been working really hard this quarter, and it's only been 3 weeks, but just feels like a grind. Like we're definitely in the grind of freshman year and then we're also in the grind of our new Q1 goals. So but it's been also really rewarding too. It's not just like this endless grind that doesn't feel like it's going anywhere. It feels better. I'm seeing the results, so I'm liking it, and it motivates me to keep the grind going. But I'm not used to having like no free time to just sit and watch movies. And
you're not used to that?
Well, I am used to that, but I'm not used to not having so much time for that. Right. And now that we've adjusted our schedules to be doing either we're doing pretty productive things or we're being bored on purpose. There's not a lot of time for that like overindulgence that I'm used to. And hopefully this just means like there's also more room to become the person that I want to be. And
being bored is great.
It's also it's really underrated. It's actually really good.
Everyone is sleeping.
Whoa.
On being bored.
Shaheen just discovered what being bored is last week, and it's his favorite thing. It's been nice to like, honestly, it's not even like a grind. It's just like detoxing this quarter. I feel like that's what it's been like. It's detoxing a lot of dopamine hits, like cheap dopamine hits, detoxing a lot of like bad habits, detoxing a lot of like, honestly, activities, people, things like that just don't bring prosperity. Like I feel like it's been a detox. So it's not that it's like everyone's like, oh, I know you're busy, and it's like, it's not that I'm like super busy. I'm just eliminating unnecessary things, and that is hard. Waste. It's hard to eliminate waste because it feels weird to sit with yourself like at all periods of the day. It's hard to do.
And the underrated thing about it is when I've made it an effort, I've made it a point to be bored, I've created so much more room for the things that I care about. To kind of, because when I'm sitting there and this like cool nature ambiance thing is
on
playing,
the TV,
and I'm just staring blankly into it, my brain is still working on the things that I had worked on previously in the day, throughout the day, and it's like solving problems and coming up with new ideas, as opposed to if I was watching like a movie or a TV show,
you're so
then my attention would be on that. So like making it a point to like eliminate ways to be bored, whatever you want to call it, it creates more room for the things that you like actually care about, the things that have like long-term benefits.
Right. Aside from the topics we're talking about, there's always like some new concept or topic that's taking over our week. It's kind of funny because I thought like the more self-employed I got, the more I would go towards this like dream life. There wouldn't be much to talk about because I don't have things from the outside world like a job or job drama or something that work gave me or friends gave me. But it's crazy. I like, even without all that stuff, I still have so much content in my brain.
But I think that kind of connects directly with this idea of being bored. When you cut off the external stimulation, you allow your internal kind of
monologue
to blossom. You know what I mean? Because your mind like craves novelty. So if it's not receiving it from the outside world, it's going to create it. And when it comes from within, like that novelty is like creativity. It's new ideas. It's innovation. It's like seeing things differently, which is a lot more productive than kind of a new news story or like a new TV show, or like some new external fun thing.
It's it makes me think of like your brain is always solving problems, like which problems are going to give it to solve,
right?
Like
some drama from
like, a reality show,
or some problem that will allow you to get closer to your dream life.
Exactly. Speaking of dream life, if you are new to this podcast and you are a fellow dreamer, like we like to call it, my name is Iffy. This is my fiance Shaw, and we started this podcast back in September, technically, of last year, and 2023. This is a space where we explore how to live first and get paid second. Whether you're an entrepreneur, you work for someone else, or you're just curious about creating your dream life. In these episodes, you'll find the inspiration, tips, and motivation on how you can navigate that process through our honest reflections as new entrepreneurs and candid interviews with everyday ambitious dreamers just like you and I.
Boom.
But today we wanted to talk about something that I feel like is kind of ironically relevant. Just came up recently, but we had already thought about this episode a while ago. So I love when that happens, when we think about things already and plan them, but then it keeps coming up again. So it's like, oh, it's still relevant. And one of those things has been lately for us, like, okay, we're always talking about the dream life, the goal, where you should get, the tools, everything you need to learn. But sometimes you don't even know where to go when you're pursuing this life that you've always dreamed of. Like, you have a fuzzy vision, or maybe you have clues, but you don't have like a path. Like, and that's the hard part. There is no one path. So it's like, where do I go from here? Like, I have this desire, I have this vision. How do I start making it happen and close the gap? And that process is very hard, and arguably takes the most time, is to figure out what it is you're trying to create, let alone the business or the skills you need to learn or the people you need to talk to, network. Like, how do you even know what subject to go to, what topic that you like? How do you know what's aligned? All of these things. Yeah. And how do you know that out of all the, 10, 15 passions or interests that you have, which one is the one that's supposed to be for me or get me towards a business or put towards this, or which one just stays my little hobby I do on the weekend? Like, it's hard to figure that out. And it's honestly, I feel like it's taken us our whole life, and it continues to.
Definitely still figuring things out. But at any point, you've figured some things out.
Yeah.
Of course, you haven't figured everything out, but you have figured some things out. So you just use that in order to take the next step.
Yeah.
So it is like a continual journey of discovery.
Yeah. I guess that kind of references our last episode about like a 5-foot plan. You kind of just start with the basics, like start with what you have, what's around you. And I think it's hard to believe, but like little actions like that can start going into the next one and the next one and the next passion. You're like, oh, finally, like that passion from 3 years ago is coming back in.
The dots connect later.
The dots connect in retrospect. And we were talking about the story of Steve Jobs and how his
calligraphy class.
The calligraphy class ended up being like a huge feature for Apple.
That's where he discovered his love of font and typeface. And that's why he made it like a really important point to include that on the Macs. Or the Apple II. And that was I don't remember.
That was a huge a competitive advantage.
Right. It was the only computer that did it at the time. Yeah.
Another thing I think we're realizing is that like this figuring, like you never have it like figured out. Like it's never like, oh, you just, the people who have the businesses, they chose that. They're like, let me write down a list of things I like. Oh, it's that one. Let me pursue it and I'm done.
Right.
It's not just like a one size or one lifetime fits all. Like you have to keep making these decisions at different stages of your entrepreneur journey or of your dream life journey. Like I, at one point, figuring out I liked marketing was a huge revelation. And then now figuring out that I like marketing, but I'm really into like, I don't know, like dream life, self-development, self-growth, like people figure authenticity. Like I'm really into that. And that's really not even completely defined, but it's starting to blossom. And I had to do the same things like I'm doing now to figure out my businesses and everything that I had to do before I realized I actually really like marketing instead of doing boring supply chain stuff. So that process will keep happening. So it's a good skill to learn. Okay, so Shaw.
Okay.
Shaw, how do you know what to follow? How do you know what direction to go in when you're lost and crowded with everybody else's opinions on what you should do and how you should live your life?
I mean, of course, this is like one of those impossible questions to answer because everyone is unique.
Yeah.
What has always just happened to work for me is pursuing my curiosity.
Yeah.
Like even going back to high school, that's what allowed me to make the decision, or that's what led to me like studying physics in college. And it was really between like philosophy and physics. Mm-hmm. And physics just seemed slightly more practical. And I think in the long run, I'm glad I chose physics. I don't know. I guess I just like thinking. Yeah. And maybe that's why I liked philosophy.
Yeah.
But I discovered that I can think just as much in physics because
it never runs out.
Yeah, there's always stuff to think about. So that's why I like physics.
Yeah.
And then when, went and worked at my dad's dealership, the decision to go back to grad school wasn't a money decision. It was a decision of curiosity because I had this piece of paper that said that I understood physics and understood how the world worked, but I didn't feel like I understood how the world worked. So I went back to grad school just to kind of learn more. It was just for my master's.
Yeah.
But then in grad school, I discovered this thing called research. And I didn't have a good understanding of what research was before I started grad school. But then I was doing it and I discovered that I really liked it. Like this idea of like, it's more of like an explore situation. You're trying to learn, you're trying to discover as opposed to you're trying to exploit some known technology. You're trying to discover something new.
Yeah.
So that, and it gave me a lot of opportunities to think, which is something I've always enjoyed. Again, it was a decision of curiosity to go for a PhD. And then when it came time for graduation, I had two options. It was either, kind of scale up freelance work because I was freelancing on the side in grad school or go work at Toyota, like in this full-time role. And it was really a decision of curiosity because I had done freelance work before. I had worked at a small business before.
Right.
I had worked in a research environment before, but I'd never done like a technical job and I'd never worked at a large corporation. So I was just really curious of what that experience was like. So that's why I went and worked at Toyota. And then ultimately leaving Toyota was a decision of curiosity because it's like, okay, what would happen if I went all in on myself? Like all in on my entrepreneurial ventures, like the content creation, like doing consulting and then build and launch a product.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good rule of thumb. But whatever that is, I feel for most people, it's a local decision, meaning like you're never going to have the full big picture figured out. So you have to have some kind of decision-making strategy that allows you to make like small scale decisions. So like for me, every time I had option A, option B, I would use the rule of thumb of which one kind of taps in, which one am I most curious about?
Yeah.
And that was the filter that I used. That was the decision-making strategy I used. But whatever that might be for you, like which one makes me feel more happy? Which one makes me feel more free?
Or creative.
Yeah. Which one makes me the most money? Even though that's not one I would agree with, that's something that might be important to people.
Yeah.
And it can definitely be part of the decision-making factor because there is a reality of the situation. Like you have to make some level of income to like survive.
Right.
But I find when you put money, like you aside, you forget about it and really focus on that one thing that's the most important to you. Like for me, it's like curiosity and learning. The money just comes. It just comes.
It does.
Naturally.
And people, like he's describing his journey, like, just like kind of curiously going through these decisions. But honestly, out of all of the things you've done, Toyota was probably the only one that made sense to anyone else around you. Like, for a long time, I mean, him pursuing a PhD in physics, everyone's like, what the hell are you going to do with that?
You're going to teach?
You're going to teach. Yeah, that was the first answer. And that's not what he wanted to do. And
I guess I teach through YouTube.
Yeah, kind of. But it's not like being a professor was your dream.
Right.
And no one, so when he said no to being a professor, everyone's like, so why are you doing this?
So what are you doing?
It didn't make any sense. And I think that's a good point that you bring up. Like a lot of times just following your curiosity, it sounds so good on paper, but then when you apply it, you're like, oh shit, like it doesn't make any sense,
especially to other people.
And especially to other people, like even to you it can barely make sense, but like let alone other people hearing like, yeah, I have this weird curiosity or interest or passion about planes. And it's like, you don't want to be a pilot. Like I want to build and like make planes for fun as a hobby and just talk about it. Like that doesn't like hit with everyone. They're like, so you want to be a YouTuber? Like they're just confused. Like they're trying to place it in something because it's uncomfortable for them too, to experience somebody doing something that has no like guaranteed outcome. That's something we're not used to.
Established examples.
Examples or anything. So they're just like confused. But I always like to think about like the people that you find successful or the ones who are doing well in their industry. Like imagine everything they're doing now. Imagine if they didn't have the money, fame, success, notoriety. It sounds fucking weird. Yeah. Like everything that successful people do now because they've made it sounds, oh yeah, that makes sense. Oh yeah, like they're the example. But it must have been weird at the time that they wanted to do it.
And I think that's a important feature of like successful people. I feel like the more the more successful someone is, like the more away from the norm, like the average lifestyle they are, the weirder they are. Because I don't think you can be like a normal person and be like extremely successful. So it's really people that are super weird, and if you're super weird, you're either going to be super successful or you're going to be like on the streets.
You know what I mean, depending on what like the variables.
Because you know you're just like you're just extreme. You know what I mean? And that kind of plays out in different ways. Like, is your extreme like a good extreme, or is your extreme like a bad extreme? So like one example is Mr. Beast. Like he's a very extreme guy, but he's like extreme in all the right ways because he's found a way to make it work, to make it provide value for a lot of people. He could be just as extreme, but
in the wrong
ways, and
or ways that are not serving him. Let me put it that way. It's
not serving him or other people.
Exactly. Like it kind of, you bringing up Mr. Beast made me think of Amelia. I forgot her name, but she's the chicken shop girl, or the chicken girl people call her. Super successful on YouTube, TikTok, all of the platforms. She's interviewing celebrities at every award show now. She did also Barbie, I think, and she didn't do the movie. She was interviewing people on the Barbie red carpet or whatever, pink carpet. Anyways, her channel, or the whole set, or her show, the Chicken Shop Date, I think that's what it's called. It took her 10 years for that show to actually like become very popular, and it went from like 0 to 100, it seems, relative to the numbers. And like I can only imagine how weird that show was 10 years ago. Before TikTok and all these apps were what they were. She's interviewing, just at the time it seemed like maybe like really like the bottom class celebrities, if that, or just like people she knew. And she has a certain persona, so it's like this awkward, funny, weird, and like I see that type of humor now, but I don't think like I saw it back then. It's like this Bobby Althoff type of like, I don't really like you, but I'm interviewing you, like kind of vibe. And she does it on purpose. I was like, that's her whole skit. But that must have been so weird back then. But now I'm kind of seeing more examples. And it just goes to show, if she had stopped or didn't even pursue that because it wasn't normal, she didn't see examples, she wouldn't be the example. She wouldn't be where she's at right now. And that's what I'm talking about. Like, her idea was just to have a set of her own show where she gets to kind of make these skits and make them authentic to like however she saw the vision. And that's so weird to explain to someone. Like, I want to go to random chicken shop or chicken places in London and interview people, but I'm purposely being quirky and weird or whatever. I know that she's kind of like that too, but like, that's what I'm saying. And that's the beauty of, you don't need to pick something that already exists when you're following your curiosity. You just need to pick something that you like. Like, she probably liked some part of communicating or interviewing people or putting on skits or like, I don't know, theater, like,
or chicken,
like meshing all of these unique interests together to create something that has never been done before.
And usually that's the story of success. You know, if you want like unconventional outcomes, you usually have to do unconventional things,
for sure,
because things that are conventionally a good idea, like going to business school or becoming a lawyer or becoming a doctor, you're going to have a conventional outcome. You're going to have a regular outcome. And it's like, why have a regular life if that's not what you want? You know what I mean?
What's the
point? Like, if that's like your dream life, then yes. But if it's like, I don't even know if I like this stuff, but it's like clearly defined, so let me just go after it.
That's not worth it.
I think it's like a win-win. So like, do the unconventional stuff. Like, if what you want, if like your dream life, or like what is interesting to you, what you're curious about, seems very unconventional, it's a win-win, because it's like, one, what you like, and two, it being unconventional puts it in that category of things that can lead to unconventional
outcomes. And you like what you do.
Yeah.
Like, imagine getting an unconventional outcome that's usually positive, and you get to spend all day doing exactly the things you like to do because that's the input you put in. And it's like, it's so simple. Like, I'm not a math person, but the formula
I didn't say anything.
the formula is like, you input equals output. And I feel like it can be that simple. What you put in is what you're going to get out. Right. So if you put in distaste for the subject that you're studying, you put in boredom, you put in I'm just going to do this to get it over with, or I mean everyone else is doing it, that's what you're going to get out. But if you put in interest or passion or curiosity, that's also what you're going to get out. And I think now Amelia is getting to talk to even more celebrities. She's getting paid, I'm
positive
sure, millions for all of this stuff. It's like this, everything she wanted, and she gets paid like well for it.
She's getting paid to live.
She's getting paid to live.
Boom.
You know, we'll have her one day on this thing. And it kind of made me feel better thinking about this, because I was thinking about my life and I'm like, this makes no sense. Like, I'm over here, like, I quit going into marketing. That kind of made sense. Freelancing kind of made sense. But like, now I've been, like, the past year I've been all over the place, like kind of having clients, kind of not, trying consulting, kind of not, content creator a little bit, but not really, starting a podcast, no audience, like now I'm starting a brand, no audience, like, or like very little, and everything is so confusing and all over the place. But you have to just start with what you have, like we were saying, just like little bits and pieces. Like your next step was, you graduated, you worked to make money, but then your next step was like, okay, I'm still curious about this. How can I get more information? School. Let me go back to school. And I had to make small decisions, because that's all you have the bandwidth to do when you don't know what direction to go in. How can I make small decisions that will get me closer to it? Like, imagine you're in the woods, you have a map, you have a flashlight, you don't have the capacity to know how you're going to get all the way over there, all the way over here. You just can see what's around you, what looks like the closest thing. But all of those little mini steps will get you closer.
And a lot of times your map is completely unreliable.
It's just not, because the map is based on what's already
conventional
been
wisdom
done before. So that's why we like this saying, like, to wrap up this point, I think we like this saying, or I'm saying we, but I say this, like, follow your ex. Like, follow your curiosity, your passion, your interest, your like, sometimes your love. I mean, if you're talking about partners or whatever, follow that thing that excites you, that brings you joy, that makes you better. Like, I think you can never go wrong following things like that. Another thing to follow, your gut.
Whoa.
Your intuition.
Wow.
I think we know more than we give ourselves credit for. 100%. And
it's like that story of me when I did that English project in 8th grade.
Tell him.
Like, predicted my whole life.
Tell him. He's a fucking witch.
I mean, who knows if this is just like noise, or I don't know if there's any deep meaning to this thing that happened. But in 8th grade, you know, they always had you doing some like silly project.
Always.
So this project was like a scrapbook for your life or something. I don't even remember, but it was some kind of scrapbook. But in it, I had to like write a letter or like a story of my life. And so this was when I was 13, and what I wrote was, you know, I want to play drums in a band in high school. Then I want to become a doctor. Then I want to become an author and have a book.
Period.
And like I had all these like predictions, and then like one day I kind of like stumbled across this scrapbook again, and like reading it, I'm like, oh, I was in a band in high school. This was before I played any instruments. Before I picked up drums. And it's like I did become a doctor, and it's like with all the writing I'm doing now,
he's an author.
I wouldn't be surprised if I wrote a book.
Yeah.
So I guess like the takeaway of that experience for me was I feel like I kind of knew what I wanted out of my life. Like at that early age, even though I had no idea that I would like start playing drums.
You had no evidence at that time.
I had no idea I liked physics. I'd never taken a physics course in my entire life. Like I had no idea I could be a good writer. Like I failed some like standardized test for writing in elementary school. Like I was never a good writer. English was my worst subject.
It's also his second language.
That's not true.
Wait, it's not?
No.
You didn't speak Farsi growing up?
Shabby spoke Farsi first, but
I literally didn't know that. I thought you spoke Farsi first.
When she went to school, everyone was speaking English, so she started speaking English. So
Farsi was her first language.
Yeah.
Okay, but then
so when I was growing up, everyone was speaking English. So English was my first language. That's why Shabby's Farsi is much better than mine.
Wow, this podcast is great. I'm getting to know you in ways I never thought. I literally thought you spoke English second.
No, bad. I can see why you would think that.
Because your writing was so bad. But anyway, no, I think that's like there's something to that. If I had the psychology, neuroscience, and spirituality background that I aim to get one day, I'm going to figure this out. Like we have the answers. Like I'm so fascinated by like how much we can get to know ourselves and how much like it's all like I feel like there's like a little map inside all of us. Like I'm sure this is woo woo, but like I feel like we know what we want, and I refuse to believe that even though we talk about ourselves as dreamers and there's people who I guess are not and want to follow a conventional route, whatever, I just don't believe that people don't have a certain vision of their life. Like they're just completely like, I want to be normal. I don't care about anything. And I just want to do I just want to check things off a list. I don't believe that there's anyone like that. I think there's just a spectrum of how well and how good you are at listening to yourself and pursuing those things and uncovering them. But I don't think that there are people on this earth who are born without some kind of purpose or destiny or fate, whatever you want to call it, like some endpoint in mind. And I guess like I've talked to people and they're like, Iffy, there's just people like you who know what they want and they like certain things and they're picky about things, and there's people who are not, that just want to live normal lives and never figure out what they want to do. And I'm just like, I don't think so. Like, I feel like we all know, and it's just about how brave or courageous you are to listen to it or even find it or understand it, because it's hard when you find it because you can't ignore it.
Right.
Because when you see the vision, it's going to come up in everything you do.
It's going to come up in your nightmares.
It's going to eat at you until you do it. And that's why like this life, everyone's like, well, how do you have the I guess courage or a motivation to go after? It's like, I don't have a choice. Right. It's not even like I'm just so courageous and I'm so motivated. I'm scared. I don't know what the hell's going to happen. Right. But the worst option for me is to not follow it, because I'm going to be haunted by my ghost every single day if I don't go after it. That's the scary part.
That reminds me of like, I wrote a blog about why I quit my job.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like for the love of entrepreneurship and to like live my dream life, but it was the fear of not like living my life, like coming to the end of my life and like living, like having regret, you know what I mean? The fear of not unlocking my full potential or just exploring it, you know, or at least trying to go after it, you know? And I think fear is a much better motivator than love.
Yeah. Or even success sometimes.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially success.
Yeah.
I would say love's probably stronger than success or money or whatever.
Yeah. Especially on a day to day. Like I was just telling him, I was just like, it's kind of weird when not only do you know the vision, and it's like you feel like you've been given an assignment, like those like hero movies where they're like given this new life. They can't unknow the reality that their guide in the movie presented to them. I'm not good at superhero references, but like if you watch any Marvel movies, there's always the hero, and then he has some new event like Black Panther. Like you have to save the world before Killmonger or whatever the hell kills everyone. Like they can't unknow that. So that's what I feel like it is.
Right. That's what motivates him. It's like the world would be so bad
if I don't do something.
If Killmonger,
kills everyone.
And I guess it's kind of like you almost have to have the same mindset. Like the world would be so bad without that version of you in existence, like making that impact.
And it sounds dramatic. It's like, okay, like everybody will be fine whether or not I do something. But the deeper you go into following your curiosities, the more you're like, oh shit, this is an epidemic.
But okay, forget about the world. Just think about
you,
those closest to you.
Yeah.
Like your family.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Because, okay, you're probably not going to have an impact on like the broader world, but you will definitely have an impact on your
people around you.
Yeah, the people around you. And we're social creatures. So like how we pick up on each other's behaviors, on each other's emotions, on each other's mindsets. So if you don't want to become the best version of yourself, like for yourself, like do it for those around you. Because if you're the worst version of yourself or like a bad version of yourself, that's what other people are getting. That's what other people are picking up on. And that's the behaviors that they're going to naturally adopt from spending time with you.
Yeah. It's like, would you want a million versions of you? If you can't handle that visual, I think that it's, oh my god, these I forgot where I saw it, but I asked Shaheen this question like 6 times because I thought the question was so good even though I knew his answer. Okay. Which is basically like it's something couples can ask each other, or if you're deciding should I be with this person or not. I forgot who said this, so somebody please reference them, but it's basically like, would you want your significant other to date your child, like that version of them? Another question was, would you want to be like, if somebody told you you're just like your partner, would you find that as a compliment or would you find that as an insult? I was like, that's fucking good. Like that's good, because I think it gets people to think in ways that they haven't before. Ditch all the excuses. Like, would you be impressed or would you not? Like, and I'm very like keen on like, you need to like the people you're around. I'm somebody who sort of unapologetically is just like, I don't like a lot of people. Like I don't like truly, I in my head, like means like I admire you, I'd want to be like you, I could answer those questions confidently and be like, yeah, I would trust this person with my child, I would, whatever. And I think we like to ignore it because it's easier, but sometimes we don't even like ourselves like that. We wouldn't even want our children to date us. It's like I like can see the motivation and like be the best for people around you, but you have to live with yourself. Do you like you? Would you want to date you? If you were the only personality on earth, would you be having a good time with people around you? If you answer that question and you're like, ugh, like, or ooh, that would be bad. Like, oh, maybe it'd be a bit more like gloomy and sad, or we wouldn't be so good at this area of life, or like our civilization would be lacking in terms of like this area. Then that maybe is an indicator that those are areas you need to work on for yourself, and then naturally that would benefit people around you. Because I personally, like, I want to be a good influence on people, but that doesn't motivate me necessarily. I always think about, if I was like the only person on earth and I had to like live with myself, like, would I be having a good time? In my current state, I'd probably be having a decent time. But without influence of other people, it'd be hard to like find the inspiration to work out and all these things. I can see that leading to like a depression and so that's to me like an indicator. I need to work on that area of me, because if I just had me, how happy would I be? And I think about that a lot, because that's all we really have. Like, we have people, we have community. I know it's important, but it's just at the end of the day, you have to live with yourself. That's the most important relationship you have. And your dreams are like, it's like your guide map to that. It's like your roadmap to the most fun, amazing, best version of yourself. And I feel like we just take that for granted. And a lot of us just like ignore it, let alone go after it. Right. We just say we don't have any.
Right.
Like,
just
what?
Write it off.
Like, write it off like it's some nonsense. And I'm like, imagine if everybody was the best version of themselves, or like lived their life fully. Like,
even if 1% of the population
was better,
that would change the world.
It would,
because we all pick up on each other's emotions, like that social contagion. Like it would change just like COVID, it kind of spread across a very small number of the population, kind of spread the virus, could spread a virus across the globe. Like if 1% of the population was the best version of themselves, that would spread across the globe.
Following your ex they actually do lead to you figuring things out, and things start to make more and more sense.
Right. Yeah.
I think it can sound cliche, like just something like, oh, that's just something, the self-help girlies tell themselves. It actually works, I think. Like when you start doing it, as silly and as simple as it sounds, and if you're somebody who's right now like, oh, come on, like what? Listen to our play episode, because there's some importance of playing and exploring. It actually works. And I kind of want to talk about like how it can actually look and go from like, oh, I have one clue, next clue, like an escape room. Like you get one clue and it leads you to unlock another one. And you're like, wow, how are these two things connected? It's because you had to pursue the first one. Like you can't do it out of order.
It's almost like you can only make discoveries in action.
Yes, only.
You can't be sitting on the couch and discovering things. You know what I mean? You have to be doing.
Yes.
You can't be waiting.
Yes.
That's like the key.
And you also can't think your way out of something. I feel people get caught in that trap, in that loop. They're like looking at a piece of paper and they're like, if I could just figure out the answer right now. And I've said that you can think your way out of, like, I've kind of mentioned that this is the kind of solution I use, like through journaling. I write out my thoughts, but it's not like that where you just list a bunch of things down and you're like, I have to figure out which one is, by looking at all of these over and over again, I'm going to figure out which one is the one that's going to lead me to this journey. No, writing things down and trying to think is just a way to get started, but you have to do something after that. That's where the actual ideation comes into play.
And I feel like you have to do, because you always have an incomplete model of the world. Like your understanding of the world is always incomplete. Like if you were an all-knowing being and you knew everything, you wouldn't have to do anything at all, because you could just run simulations in your head. But no one is like that.
We don't have all the information.
We don't have all the information. No. And the only way to gather information is through experimenting,
and
is through doing, is through action, is through interacting with the world and gathering information.
It's like that quote, my friend literally sent it to me and I always forget how it's said, but it's basically like the journey reveals itself through action or through you doing. There's similar quotes like that, but basically it's saying you have to do first, and then like in hindsight or through the process, that's how you learn what it is you were meant to do. That's how you find your purpose. That's where you find the reason, is through the action. A lot of times we have it in our mind that picking something initially has to be the final destination. And that's hardly the case. Like the thing you're picking right now is just so you can, it's an excuse to get started. It's an excuse to go somewhere. And even picking the wrong thing is like honestly so much better, and actually probably the best, than doing nothing about it at all. And I think everyone's like, well, how do you get started? Well, how do you do? The answer is always just do it. Like, how do I start posting? How do I know if I'm going to be a good content creator? How do I know if I'm going to be a business owner? How do I know this is the idea? You won't. Like, you will never know until you just make the first post, until you try to make your first sale, until you try to do drop shipping, and then maybe you realize I don't like this. Like, you have to fail constantly. And failing is the best place for information. It teaches you what you like, teaches you what you don't like. It like almost eliminates a whole section of information that you can now just be like, oh, I don't have to think about it. It wastes my time with that. It doesn't work. I know it doesn't work. I've done it. So let me try something else. And that thing usually will be better than the thing you initially started with. What are some things you failed at or like learned through your process of doing? Like you didn't really know if it was going to be good, but you're like, I have a clue, and then you did it, and then you're like, oh, I really like this, or you're like, no, this is not it for me.
List of failures is so tremendous,
so big
that I'm overwhelmed with information.
I mean, I have a fresh one.
Oh, you got one? Okay, you go first.
I mean, my consulting business.
Yeah,
I 100% failed at that, and I'm actually really glad that I did.
Yeah.
I thought I had clues. And I guess you could argue like, oh yeah, that should have been obvious. And yeah, that's what I thought too. Like I did marketing, freelancing for like 2 years. I was doing people's social media. I was doing their strategy. I was learning all the ins and outs of business and how to consult people. I learned so much, doing freelance, which also, by the way, started from me just doing one job. Like it always starts with just one action, and that one job started for me just applying to one application, like it's just always one next step.
Right.
But with consulting, last year when I had kind of been laid off of my full-time client, I was like, SOL, I needed to make my next move so I can make money. And I was like, okay, I'm going to start my own business. I think this is my calling. This is my sign. And I was like, the next obvious step, that's what all the entrepreneurs say to do, is to just take what you do and make it a little bit more businessy, just like do what you already know. Right. And I was like, oh, I know how to consult people. And this is something better because I don't want to just be doing the tactical work of posting and copywriting. I want to do more strategy, coaching, high level stuff. I had it all figured out, or so I thought. I even made a TikTok. Yeah, that's a red flag. If you're like, I got this. This is so, this is how I'm going to make money. Da, da, da. I made a TikTok about how my roadmap to my packages and how I'm going to make 3K on this package and 6K on this package and 9K, everything. And don't get me wrong, it was a fun process. I was having fun doing it. It felt like a new, project. It just felt good, but it was wrong ultimately when I started consulting. When I started doing the consulting work,
getting real world information,
trying to sell talking to customers, trying to sell myself as a consultant. It was like, okay, I'm noticing signs, I'm a little exhausted every time I have a call. I'm a little I don't think I could have calls all day. There's something about me I notice whenever I'm not taking action on something, because I'm a very executor. When I'm not taking action on something that I know all the steps to do, there's usually something very misaligned with it. And that kept happening. I was technically working on this business full time at some point, or even part time, and I was not making a lot of progress. Couldn't get a website up to save my life. My email signature, doing packages, all these little things would just take forever. I'd procrastinate, and just doing it was not what I thought. But I had the clues. I had, oh my God, this is what I want to do. I had the idea that just randomly hit me. And even pursuing that, I got it kind of bottled up so much about how much I didn't like it. I had to just be I need a break. I need to do something else. Okay. And I decided to book a trip with my friend because I was just so lost and confused. I'm if it's not this, I don't know what else, because, I don't have any other skills or talents. I don't know. I don't have a crazy business idea. And then I ended up going on this trip with my friend, having a crazy revelation about how the best things in our lives and the best things in life are when we don't have so much strategy and planning behind it. It's just through chance. We meet our best friend through chance. We meet our partner through chance. We had the best jobs through chance. Of us just not even having a reason to go after it. We just do it.
Wow.
And I come back with an idea to put this without reason, no reason thing on a sweatshirt.
What's going on that sweatshirt there?
And I want to preface this by saying this. I asked my friend, who's French, how to say no reason in French, because I was
this was during the trip.
This is during the trip, because this was our motto. We kept saying it to each other on the trip. And she said, you say it sans raison. And I was like, oh my God, love. I love everything in French, so it doesn't matter what she would have said. I would have been love. And so I was just that's so pretty. I want to put that somewhere. I was I want to put that on a sweet shirt. I want to put it on a sweatshirt. And she's yeah, let's do it for no reason. I'm yeah, let's do it. And I was I'm going to send it to all my friends. It's going to be a fun reminder for me. I love this. Come back from the trip, still was confused about consulting, still just been okay, fine. I don't really know. I'm going to try to wean things off and do easy work and just do content and see what happens with the content. And then after I'm doing the content, and consulting is just slowly declining to where I'm having no clients at all. And I'm not even going out of my way to fix this problem. I'm kind of glad that it's happening. I was just you know what? I don't even think it's so much so consulting that is so the bane of my existence. I think it's just the fact that I am done working for people. I don't know everything, but I know I have skills, and I've always just craved having my own establishment. I don't need people to give me stuff to do. I just want to do what I want to do.
Right.
And I was but I don't have anything else. And then I was I did my budget one day, and I basically only had enough until the end of the year to make something happen. And I was just January, we have to figure something out, something new. And I was what if I just started selling these sweatshirts? What if I started a brand off of this thing, and I can start this business for no reason? because it's not like I have to do it now, and it's not like it has to be the one, but it's something I believe in and I like. And guys, when I tell you, even this was 3 weeks ago, by the way, not the trip, that was in October, but this revelation was like 3 weeks ago. When I tell you, the more I've just pursued this very brand, the more things are fitting and aligning, and I'm like, what? This is so random.
It's funny because with your consulting business at the start, everything made sense.
It was so clear on paper.
As you did it, it made less and less sense. This is almost like the exact opposite. Like you go on this trip for no reason, you come up with this brand name for no reason, and then you just like start pursuing it really for no reason. But then as you are doing it, it makes more and more sense.
And it's like and why it made no sense and why there was no reason to it. So I'm not a designer. I've never worked in retail. I've never worked in clothes. I've never owned or built a brand. I've always worked for other people's brands. But it's so funny, even though it made like no sense on paper, I've always loved branding. And this company is not just a sweatshirt company, how I'm describing it. It's more of like an aspirational lifestyle brand where I want to push the message, like do things for no reason. Like it actually has more answers and more reasons than you think. And it's an exact like replication of what's happening in my life with this brand too.
It's like, we were talking about this earlier. There's like the category of things that have no good reason to do it.
Right.
And so within that category, there's the things that you would want to do and the things that you don't want to do.
Yeah.
So if there's no good reason to do it, but you still want to do it, that's probably a good indication you should go after it.
Right.
You know? And so I think that's kind of the genius or the upside. Like, I don't know, maybe that's like the secret of that strategy.
Yeah.
It's like there is no good reason, there's no conventional reason, there's no monetary reason, there's no value.
Like
seeming
it's always those things that we'd be okay without. Like it's always those things that like I don't have to do. Like it's real, I'm going out of my way.
But you just can't put your finger on why you still want to do it
anyway.
Yeah. So you just do it. So you went to France and
I
like you kind of realized like, oh wow, there's a lot of benefits like when you're running around Amsterdam or you're running around Paris or whatever,
shopping and just living like, because these are things I like to do. I've always said like every time we've talked about business, because we're both into business, but I've always felt like I don't really have like a exact business in mind. All I know is that I like working. I like doing things I like to do, which includes traveling, putting on outfits, talking, communicating, thinking about ideas, developing myself. And that's all kind of hard to package in one thing. But I'm telling you, just like anything good in my life has come from me pursuing things without a reason. This very podcast, like we've explained many times, was kind of like an afterthought. And the more I go after it, I'm just like, this is so fun. And like, it makes everything that we always talk about, all of our conversations, solidified. It makes it make more sense. Like it just felt really random in the beginning. This podcast, even starting content creation again, back up again in 2022 when I did, felt unnecessary. And that like content was another good example because I didn't necessarily again have a reason to do it, but I was like, I want to still do it anyway. And at the time I was like balling, making money with freelance. I had clients, but I was just like, I miss my own creative outlet. I don't have to do this thing, but I want to. I'm tired of just, my creativity not having a place to go. And I remember I did one action in that December of 2022 when I started posting again on TikTok for real. And I did one action. I cut off one of my clients. I had like 3 or so clients with them, plus my full-time client. And I was just like, you know what? This sounds kind of crazy. Like this is obviously paying me money, but I'd rather use that time to just make content for not money in exchange or for nothing in exchange. I just want to do that. And that basically led up to me feeling like posting so often, kind of taking that seriously in a way, led me to now where like I've eliminated every client just to do this all day. Like and I wouldn't have ever felt that confident to eliminate all my clients at the time. But it's like the more you do it, you start to realize like, oh, I can't live without this. Like I need this. And I think that's why like people who like work out, even they kind of go like crazy with it because they're like, no, I actually want to not just do this every here and there. I want to do this every day. I want to do this multiple times a day because like I need this. It becomes more and more important. It's like the more time you spend with your partner or your family, like they get more sacred. You're willing to do more the longer you're with them. And I think it's because you're starting to realize more and more how much that thing means to you and how happy you are with it. And it's the same thing with these small like seeds. They start off as just these little passions. Like Shine and I like to chat and have conversations about entrepreneurship.
I love talking about stuff. I love thinking, and I love like conversations that make me think.
Exactly. And that was just a small seed that we've been doing since we met.
Yeah.
And
yeah, that's really like why we started dating.
Yeah, honestly, because I think we were the only people who
just always had fun conversations.
Yeah, even how him and I met, just very, very by chance. Like everything that has been the best things in my life, always just small little seeds that I just wanted to do anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I feel like reason is a loaded word. I feel like what's reasonable is like what's conventional, what makes sense monetarily, like what, you know, society thinks is the right choice.
Yeah.
So that's, I think maybe that's why I think without reason or doing things with no reason is a powerful like approach.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of going back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the episode. It's like being unconventional if that's what is calling you, you know what I mean? If that's what seems interesting to you, because there's no reason for it to be interesting to you.
Yeah. Out of everything in the world that exists, why would you be called to this very specific thing?
Right.
I don't think that's a coincidence. I don't know what creates that phenomenon. I'm not trying to make this spiritual, but like all I know is that it's just like it happens way too often for it to not mean something. Like the fact that people are just drawn to certain things. And also when you look at the things you're drawn to and you look at what you're good at, I don't think it's a coincidence. Like you like to think. I feel like you're also very like organized and like exact person. Like you follow all the rules. Like when you put them all in like a chart, you're like, this is like a genre. Like it just makes sense when you put everything together. And I think we can do that with ourselves. Like it's kind of like I always say, like when I did content, it's really funny because when I did consulting, all of the ideas and beliefs I put behind what I taught with my content is just what I believe in life. And it's the same things I'm teaching now, just in a different form. But one thing I would say is like you basically are born a niche because you just have all of these very specific things. But when like as you make friends and as you meet people, they're not like, well, you also like music and you like thinking and you're curious. Like, no, because that just makes sense. Like musicians have to be curious to like make songs. They have to be thinkers because they're writing. Like it just makes sense. And I think that like you have to believe that that's true for you too, because we see it in other people. You're like, oh, look at their journey. Like, look at this artist's journey through this. That just makes so much sense now. And it's like, it did not make sense to them at the time. Like they had to, and you're not going to be able to, unfortunately, just like write things down and be like, wow, yeah. You kind of have to live it too. I mean, you could do that exercise where you're like, what do I like to do? What am I good at? Like there's plenty of exercises like that, but you still have to start.
That's just a starting point.
That's just a starting point. Exactly.
Or proxy. That's not a replacement for actually
doing it. You still have to live it out. Trust me, I've written down all of my business ideas ever since I've had them. 2 years ago, I had ideas of like what iOA Studios is. Like I feel like everything was kind of the same. It was just rearranged now. Like all of my ideas and motivations have been the same stuff. Again, don't think that's a coincidence. It's been the same stuff. It just morphed into like a more refined version of it, you know?
And that refining only happens through doing. It's kind of like the natural evolutionary process. You know what I mean? It's just through iteration, things become refined and refined because you start removing the irrelevant things and the things that don't work and the things that weren't aligned and the things that you don't actually care about.
Which leads me to believe like we are born with the answer. It just we accumulate life. Like we just accumulate all this junk, and then adulting is just removing all of that junk, and it's hard.
Also, I feel like we've had multiple conversations in the past where you said you wanted to start a brand.
I know.
Or you wanted to have some kind of boutique where you curated. And that's why your business is called like your LLC is called IOA Collection. Because this idea of curation and bringing things together has always been like, I don't know, it's been a element of what you've been interested in. So even though the brand might seem so wild and crazy to you? Like, to me, it just sounded obvious.
It's so crazy how that happens.
Yeah.
All of that to say, it always starts and honestly ends with you following your intuition. Like, you always, because there's always going to be a next something.
Right.
So it's a skill you will continuously learn. I'd rather learn the skill than just figure it out, because that's not real anyway. But there's no such thing as like, I'm just going to figure it out once. It's the skill that's important. Like listening to yourself. That's the successful thing, not being successful. Right. Having $1 million is not the successful thing. Knowing how to make $1 million is a successful thing. And I think I'm just excited because it's like making sense, but it's like, like it doesn't make sense. But like maybe a year or two from now looking at this, I'm gonna be like, oh yeah, girl, this was so obvious. Like, how are you missing that? And that's how I see like content now. I'm like, you were born to do this. Like, there's no way you could go throughout life not doing this. Right. But it only happens through action, and it's messy action, and it looks weird. I've had millions of emails and Instagram accounts that have failed and come back. It's messy. Like, it's so messy, but it's real when you follow, when you keep going. Honestly, the key is just don't give up on it. Just keep, even if it's not the thing, like even though consulting wasn't the thing, I just didn't give up on the dream. Like, don't be stubborn about the vision, flexible on the details. Boom. Thanks, B.
I have nothing to add.
I was preaching again.
That was good. I'm excited though. I'm excited for San. It feels right. It makes sense from like an outside perspective.
Okay, good.
And it seems like it's making sense because it's like such a good excuse to do these things that you've been dying to do.
And that's what made a lot of the, ironically, me pursuing it for no reason. I'm starting to see all of the reasons why I should do it now. Because I'm like, I never had a reason to go after like branding. I never had a reason.
You've always wanted to do it.
But I've been so curious about it. And it's like small curiosities. It's not like I've had major signs. It's just been like, oh, in college, it's like, that's such a fascinating concept. Or when I see brands and how they make people like do things and feel, I'm like, that's such a cool concept. Like, what is that? And I never had a reason to like open a book about it or think about it more. But now that I have this brand, I'm hungry for it. Like, I want to figure it out. And I've always had tips and tricks on how to market things and how to do email newsletters, but I never had anything to do that about. Like,
there's something really satisfying because like, you were doing, so kind of like, this is how I see your timeline. It's like you were at Ericsson and you had you're living the dream, like the college dream of like getting a full-time job at a corporation, getting a paycheck, etc.
Yeah.
After that dream turned into a nightmare, you turned to freelance, which was like this whole new world. It's like, oh, wait. Those skills I was getting paid for at a corporation, I can use them and there's no ceiling. Like, I can make, go ahead.
Sorry, not to cut you off. I want you to continue. But like, even in, like, I'm realizing now in freelance, I was actually kind of excited because I'm like, oh, I finally get to use all these marketing skills that I never got to use at my job. So it was a very analytical job. So I was like, oh, finally I get to like practice on social media and design things. So it's kind of similar what happened there. So it's
like you had all these skills that you couldn't use in that job that you could use in freelance, and there was like no limit to what you could do. But now in this new era, like I see that San is like a new phase where you can take all those skills and instead of like providing it as a service to clients, it's like just provide it as a service to yourself. Like pour your skills into yourself. And I feel like there's something really satisfying about that. Like, I'm kind of doing this in small ways, but I'm just imagining like if I had a business that I could use my data science skills for to like drive value, that would be just really fulfilling and satisfying. It's like what I know, like, and my skills are valuable, and I can just crank up, or like I can control the value generation like on my own. Like, I don't have to hire anyone, or I don't have to find someone's problem to solve. Like, I have tons of problems I can
in my own company with my own product.
And I have the skills to solve them. I feel
so
like
satisfying.
There's something really satisfying about that.
So satisfying because it's like you finally get to apply what you like and you're interested in to solve your own issue. And I know that sounds so simple, but when you actually do that, that's another level of it's another level of like because I've always had, even with my clients, there's marketing things I could never apply because I have to listen to, it's their account. I can't tell them what to do with their business. But now I get to do it for myself, and it feels good, and I get to try it, and there's no rules, and which could be scary, but for the most part, I think it's fun, especially if you're good at something. Like, just say you're good at coding, or you're good at talking to people. When you get to do it in your way, it's playing. It feels like you're playing around in a fun way, and that playing actually leads you to income. That's even better. So I don't know, I feel like there's something to following your intuition and your gut, and believing in yourself. And I know it's kind of like, it's easier said than done, but I guess if I were to take a stab or a guess at, okay, I'm at ground zero, I have no clue. I've told this to people, and I think it's good. I think it's good advice, but I don't know. You guys tell me. List out things that make you feel good. Like those things that like you feel warm inside, or they internally like light you up, or you smile thinking about it, or or you're like, I could do that thing for hours, or I could talk about that thing for hours. I could I'd watch a YouTube video, things you're clicking on YouTube or on social media, you constantly find yourself looking into them. Write it down and just start brainstorming. Like, don't brainstorm a job. Please do not brainstorm a job or a title or a position or a career field. Forget about labels here. Brainstorm activities that are tied to that feeling. So like for me, I constantly found myself on social media TikTok, or marketing TikTok, or pop culture TikTok. Like, how can I make that thing into an activity? Like marketing, obviously I can make that into a job. It just happens to be a career field, but that's not what I was looking for. There's like things in marketing. So I really like designing, or I like copywriting. Like, maybe I just need to write every day. Maybe I just need to like make a poster. Like I remember something I would do that was kind of like indirectly doing this is like, I would make itineraries for all of my trips. I would go on with my friends. Like, and then I would also make like posters, or like even at Ericsson or my company, I would, for like the clubs I was in, I would make the designs, or I'd design the dashboard for my analytics job. And those are ways that you can make this thing that just like lights you up into a physical form. If you like talking, maybe a podcast is a good idea. You don't have to know how it's going to make you money. You don't have to know what it's going to be about. Just start talking. Like, even if you want to get really granular and you're like, okay, I want to start a podcast, and I like to talk, but I don't know what to talk about. Turn on the camera. You don't even have to post this thing. Just start talking. Just do it. Literally do anything. And if you're scared to do it, try to break it down. How can I make this the most simple form it can be? If you know?
Yeah, I really like this approach of like just taking inventory of like the things that you like and don't like, the things that make you feel good, that make you don't feel good. Like things that fuel you, things that drain you. And it's like, you're probably not going to be able to sit down and write everything down in like a short period of time. But like, I would do that, and then like, just keep track of them. Like go throughout a week, and every time like you experience something that you really didn't like, write that down. Like you experienced something that was like awesome,
write
or
it
like
down.
really energized you, like write that down. And I feel like if you just do that for like a week or two, and then after that you come back and like review the list, you're like, you'll realize that you know a lot more than you thought you did in that initial kind of time period.
I think that's a really good idea, because I was listening to my human design, which human design is like I don't know, I'm not an expert at it, but it's some kind of like personality test. I feel like it's like mixing Myers-Briggs Strengths Quest, or what's the other one, the ENFJ type stuff.
Sure, like
personality test with like a zodiac. Like I feel like it's like a baby of those two. But I swear this is the most accurate shit I've ever taken in my life. Like even the Myers-Briggs, even as scientific as it is, like this shit felt like it knew my soul. And it told me that I learn, or they kind of said like manifest through responding. That's how I forgot there's a word, like I take action on things, or I live my life through responding. So they said like for my personality type, I'm a manifesting generator. If I want to make a decision, I shouldn't just be like, what do I want to eat today? I have to say, do I want Chinese food? No, I really am not in the mood for that. Do I want Indian food? That sounds good. Like, I have to respond to things and honestly, that might just be my personality type, but I feel like that's kind of true for everybody. It's kind of hard to like think, what do I like? And it's easier to be like, do you like this? And you're like, no, I for sure don't like that. And I found that just like really helpful and like practical, because it's kind of like when you do the job that you like or don't like, you're like, oh, I really like this job or I don't like this job. It's not confusing. Your gut reaction will be like yes or no.
Right.
And and if you don't know, maybe you just need to do it a little longer until you do feel like yes and no. And I think you can kind of it's like a process of elimination. You just keep trying things. I tried freelance. It was a yes or it was a no. And freelance was a yes for me at the time. It's a no for me right now. You know, corporate was a yes for me at a time. It's a no for me right now. Right. And I just keep trying things until they work or don't work. And then it just leads you to the next thing. It's like a puzzle. It's like just ever going process. And it's honestly, I feel like that's our whole life. You're just doing things, seeing if they work or not. Relationship work doesn't work. Eating dairy doesn't work or works. And then I realized I can't do that anymore. I think it could be helpful if you have to like brainstorm first, to start with like general topics, but then kind of get deeper into like the specific part of that topic or industry that you like. Like if it's hard for you to like you're not doing anything in your week, or you don't have examples, or you're like really not engaged in what's happening in your life, yes, take your current inventory and start deciding what you like, what you don't like. But also you can brainstorm things that you've always thought about, or things you constantly are researching or asking people about or whatever. And then when you get into that topic, like start thinking like, what specifically about that do I like and not like, and not just thinking about things in terms of like jobs or titles, because you have to understand the job or the title, it already exists.
Right. It's conventional.
And if you like the title, and if you like, and you feel aligned to it, great, then that means that there's a sign you should try it. But it's something that's already been done, and if you're feeling a way that you don't see, then trying to squeeze what you like into the job, that's not going to lead to the new revelation.
And it's usually not going to be 100%, because if you have like two lists, like the things that fuel you, the things that drain you, it's very, very rare that you're going to find something that already exists that has everything in this category and nothing in the other category.
Right. Yeah, I know. I don't know if this metaphor is helpful, but I kind of think about like this trial and error process, or this like seeing what you like, seeing what you don't like, everyday type thing. I kind of see it in this like, it seems unnecessary, and it seems like people are going to be like kind of, why are you going out of your way to try some new activity every week, or sit down every day to brainstorm ideas and think about your future? It seems unnecessary, and it seems like, where the hell is this going? But every time you do that, and every time you do encounter an obstacle, I feel like it's helpful to know that that is the path. Podcaster that I watched, she said this, like, what if you told yourself this is how it's supposed to be? Every time you felt weird or you felt resistance going after that thing that you want, like, what if this was supposed to be how you feel? What if this is supposed to happen? And I find that really helpful, because a lot of times we immediately write off our experience as the weirdest, this is incorrect, not supposed to be like this, as ever. Like, we always write off our experience as like, no, I'm doing something wrong, I'm off track. But what if you're supposed to feel off track, and that's actually the thing that leads to the next step? And it's kind of assuming the best in your process can be really comforting sometimes when you have no other example to look at. And honestly, I think you do have an example to look at. Like, anyone who's successful will tell you they felt weird, they felt strange, they wanted to give up. So if you're feeling those things, that is the path. That is the right way to do it, you know? So don't give up, basically. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode, and we will see you next week.